Time for a check of the day's business news with Brian Quinn. Good evening, Brian.
Hello, Donna.
You're starting out with a look at how U.S. markets closed after the U.S. President Donald Trump announced a national emergency.
That's right, over on Wall Street. It was a sluggish rally after the worst day since 1987. That rally, though, picking up major steam at the close as Donald Trump announced a public-private partnership with some of America's biggest retail and healthcare companies to launch extensive coronavirus testing. All major indexes nearly recovering their losses from yesterday's 10% drop. You see the Dow, S&P, and the Nasdaq all up around 9.3%. European indexes notched some tepid gains by comparison after double-digit falls yesterday. This despite a raft of fiscal spending measures unveiled Friday. London closed up nearly 2.5%. Paris 1.8%. The DAX in Frankfurt just barely eking out 0.75%. All of those indexes had lost over 10% yesterday. Milan with some solid gains over 7%, but remember that's after a 17% loss yesterday, so nowhere near making up for the loss. Earlier, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin had urged Americans not to overreact to the market turmoil. Here he is in Washington.
Well, my comment is don't stare at the screen, okay? It'll be higher a year from now, as I said. People who weathered the crash in 1987, people who weathered the financial crisis, for long-term investors, the U.S. is the best place to invest in the world. And again, I can't predict where the market is on a daily basis. People should be less concerned about going up and down.
Well, Thursday's steep losses on European markets were sparked in part by what many investors saw as an underwhelming intervention by the European Central Bank using monetary policy options like corporate bond purchases and negative interest rate loans. Well, Friday saw European governments and the wider EU bring out the fiscal cavalry with a range of government spending measures, including €500 billion promised by Germany to support the union's #1 economy. But will even that be enough? Colin Kinneber reports.
Saving lives and the economy at any cost. That was the message from European leaders after the bloc's financial markets saw their worst day in more than 30 years. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said this would mean not just a €37 billion investment package, but also relaxing restrictions on deficit spending by the bloc's member states.
They should be encouraged and they should feel comfortable to take all the necessary measures they need to support people. We at the European level are providing maximum flexibility.
Her message was addressed above all to Italy, the new epicenter of the epidemic, where only supermarkets, pharmacies, and newspaper kiosks are still open. Meanwhile, the EU's largest economies announced major stimulus measures of their own. In Germany, Finance Minister Peter Altmaier announced, quote, unlimited credit to businesses, ranging from taxi drivers to large companies. Much the same message in France. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said that in addition to compensating employees for losses in pay, the country would extend loan guarantees worth tens of billions of euros to small and medium-sized businesses.
Supply-side politics has never meant, and I have always been very clear on this, that the state is abandoning its protective role. And today it has a role to protect, to defend our companies, to support the economy, and it's going to play it to the fullest.
The EU Commission is warning, though, that such measures may not be enough to prevent a recession, with officials saying growth this year will likely drop below zero for the first time since 2012.
Airlines in particular have been taking drastic measures in the face of cratering demand during the viral outbreak. British Airways lining up job cuts as CEO Alex Cruz says the company and the industry face a crisis of global proportions. Dutch flagship carrier KLM now says it's preparing to cut from 1,500 to 2,000 jobs, while Germany's Lufthansa is seeking state aid to stay solvent. Meanwhile, Norwegian Air says only a government bailout can keep it from going the way of Britain's Flybe, Europe's largest regional carrier, which went bankrupt last week. Shares in European airlines did rebound Friday from Thursday's sell-off, but remained down over 40% for the year. The industry's main trade association says government intervention is likely the only hope for many firms.
We are asking, all the governments who have put restrictions, and the U.S. government particularly, to review the decision permanently to see whether they can alleviate or waive that decision. The sooner, the better. Additionally, we are asking governments, to permanently assess the economic consequences of these type of measures. To be conscious that of the negative impact it might have not only on our industry, but on the whole economy.
And finally, for business, with so many sectors taking a beating, there is one that's been chugging along just fine. Supermarkets here in France are doing record business as shoppers rush to stock up in case of quarantine. For the week of March 2nd to March 8th, grocery sales were up over 5.5% in France. The weekly average growth in 2019, just 2% overall. Agro-industrial leaders, distributors, and transporters are coordinating to ensure supply chains remain in place. Officials have also advised against panic shopping. For my part, Delano, I've found you can actually make room for more toilet paper if you just get rid of some of the food that you have.
But are you stocking up on food?
Yeah, I buy a little extra every time. I'm not going out and filling up the shopping cart and pushing it around the aisles, but I just, every time do maintenance shopping, add a few things just in case.
I don't have space to add a few things, but I will see. Thank you very much.
A few rolls of toilet paper.
Brian Quint with today's business news.